My mother's sick. She doesn't have much longer on this earth, and the one person who I thought would be by my side through all this is my loving wife. But turns out, she has this weird thing in her head where she tells me I have to choose between my mother and her. Guys, all I asked her was, hey, can my mother move in with us for 2 months? She's very sick and she might not even make it those 2 months. And this is a woman that's been there for me for everything. I mean, my father passed away when I was young, and the only person who would console me and be there for me was my mom. Of course I'm not going to abandon her. Well, guess what my wife has to say about that? In the midst of everything, I just started my new life. Life is not a bed of roses. That's what I heard. But I suffered from the pretentious behaviors of humanity as well. Personally, I'm not a fan of hypocrisy, but it seems like I have to face it in my life. I've separated from my wife a few months ago because of her infidelity, which led me to take this decision in my life. The journey towards our marriage was an easy one, but I started facing hurdles in my marriage after just a few months. My wife tends to confront someone with her malicious actions if her conditions are not fulfilled according to her terms. Before marriage, I was swamped with my emotions. I was unable to evaluate them properly, and before our marriage, in her past, she used to hook up with every single guy whom she encountered in the bar. I always believed she would not judge or evaluate people on the basis of their past, but there's one dark reality that we should not turn our eyes to. We should at least consider people's past and evaluate people's behavior while considering their patterns. Any red flag that pops up in that particular scenario does not make yourself blind due to inner emotions. On the other hand, my mother's health was not adequate. Doctors told us about the serious condition of my mother's health, and I was unable to absorb it. She needed her son in this crucial time. I was also struggling with financial crisis at this exact particular time in my life, and I needed some support from my other half. But she had her own preferences and her own conditions. She would not stand with any other person in our house, and she was not willing to sacrifice her wishes for some particular part of my life. I was swamped with my conditions, and I sought her support, and she refused it on my face. And then I did what I had to do to make everything right, but it seemed like she came up with innovation. 5 years ago, it was a windy autumn day when I saw Rachel for the first time. The moment I laid eyes on her, my heartbeat dropped. I'd never seen anyone so beautiful as her. She was wearing brown leather boots, and her curly hair was blowing in the breeze. She was holding coffee, laughing, and walking around with her friends. After a few days, I saw her again, and she was sitting gossiping and having lunch with her friends. I gathered my power and walked towards her with my lunch tray. I went to her and sat down in front of her, and I asked if it was alright if I had lunch. She looked at me, smiled, and nodded. But after 5 minutes, she got up and left with her friends, and as I sat there having my lunch and thinking about my next approach, after 2 days, we met again. Oh, I didn't wait, I asked her out. She told me that she was going out with friends and could consider taking me as well with them. I told her that would be a date then. She said she had another date upcoming and she would decide if she would consider it a date or not. I agreed and brought her chocolates the next day. And we went out to the movies together. I had an amazing time with her. In the end, I asked her if she liked it, and she told me that she would be going out with another guy from the football team. I thought it was a joke at first, but then I realized and accepted my reality. I wanted to confront her because of her incomprehensive behavior towards me, so one day, I saw her with her friends while hanging out with them, and I went there and confronted her. She looked at me and she was momentarily speechless, and she came up with an argument of not making any commitments to me. My problem was not there. No, not the commitment. All I was seeing was her pattern that eluded me with pain. If I'm going out with someone, I would expect her to not date someone in that particular time frame. It's just like you're satisfying your own dopamine and playing with the hearts of other people. It was quite rude of her, but I tried to ignore it and she went out with the other guy and, well, they hooked up. I did not receive a call from her for a month. I saw them together many times at school and I was absolutely heartbroken. But after a month, she broke up with him and she called me crying. She just needed a shoulder at the moment and she was alone. I ignored my negative thoughts and, well, we started dating again. But at the time, I believed in these false perceptions of mine and adapted my behavior accordingly. My belief about changing people and relationships became so vivid that I was unable to think of some other appropriate explanation. Mainly because I did not want to, because I knew that I was falling for her. Loving someone with your full energy is not bad, but emotions do make you believe in the things that should fall in the category of, well, red flags. After high school, I started to work at a very popular firm and made good money. I proposed to her and told her that I wanted to grow old with her, and we rushed into marriage. But I think that was probably the worst decision of my life that turned out to be a miserable disaster. Well, what I'm saying is, disaster? Yeah. Let's move further and we'll let you know. We got married and rented a house across the street from the house of my mother. I tried to make both ends meet and tried my best to keep her happy and healthy. I would visit my mother weekly. My wife and my mother did not have a very healthy relationship per se, but my mom would never speak a lot. She was happy that I was happy with Rachel, and one day, my mother called us and said that she wanted to discuss something important. We had dinner together, and after having dinner, she asked us to sit down and told us that she was going through the last stage of lung cancer. I could not believe it because my world was instantly turned upside down. I asked her how long she's been hiding this. 2 years, she said, which is why she wanted me to settle down and marry the love of my life. I asked her what were the doctors saying, what could we do? She told me that there was no cure for it and that not even chemo would work because of her age. It was better to spend the remaining time with her loved ones, and my father passed away during childhood. After the death of my father, my mother was the one who was always there for me. My grandparents, well, they've already died, and I was the only child that my mother had. We stayed there late and then came back home to sleep. After coming home, Rachel did not ask me if I was alright or what should we do next. She just went to sleep, and I could not understand why she was behaving like this. That night, as I lay in the bed next to Rachel, my mind was filled with mixed emotions. I was looking at her, but her face was cold, not depicting any emotion, and she tempered my mental peace as I was expecting support from her side. She slid into the sheets of the bed and pretended to be asleep. I could not sleep the whole night as I was stuck in this loop. In the middle of the night, I heard someone mumbling. It was coming from the side of Rachel's bed, and it seemed like she was talking with somebody, or maybe she was mumbling. After a few minutes, she changed her side of the bed and she checked me to see if I was asleep or not. Well, I pretended to be asleep, and she went outside of the room. My mind was surrounded by a lot of questions, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, you know. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation, or any of her friends needed to talk to her immediately, so I wanted to ask her, but I did not want to jeopardize our relationship. But one thing that leads me towards the edge of suspiciousness. She came into the room after 2 hours in the middle of the night, and it's something that was not adequate. But I refrained from confronting her because if there was something malicious, I would need a shred of perfect evidence. Early in the morning, when we were sitting at the breakfast table, I just randomly asked about the last night's call. Her reaction was impulsive and she got super defensive with her facial expressions not being normal. I also lost myself in front of her aggressive attitude. My blood was burning and she called out to me as if I was not her husband. I barged into my room without making any breakfast, and we had a horrific argument. Let me tell you, she could win arguments while portraying her woman weak side, and she knew how to play tactics. I really did not know what to do, and any advice from you guys would be appreciated. Update number 1, a few months later. So, after a few months, I asked Rachel if we could arrange to live together with my mother or if she could come and spend the remaining time with us at her house. Rachel gets angry and starts to shout. She said she would never stay with my mother, and I had to choose one or the other. I'm not going to live with your mother, it's either her or me. That's not something that I'm going to buy. Her face twisted and her eyes flashed with anger. We had a horrendous dispute and she was not ready to listen to me in any way. After having a dispute with me, she starts screaming at my mother and asking her to leave her house. She was already at the last stage of cancer and I did not want any kind of trouble for her. Well, my mother asked her to calm down and she wanted to save my relationship with her. She stood up from there without answering my mother's concern and went into her own room. At that moment, I told her if she could not allow anyone else to stay here at her house, then I would not also stay here either. I took my possessions and clothes and went to my mom's. I started to live with her for the next 2 months, and I stayed with her, took care of her, cooked food for her, and took her to the doctor. I just tried to spend the maximum time that I had. I tried to talk to Rachel multiple times, but she would shut down my messages and calls. One day, she threatened me that if I did not come home, she would sleep with another man and block me. Well, I was broken as I was already going through a lot, and my wife was supposed to be here for me, but she was making me suffer. At the end of the conversation, she mentioned that she meant each and every word that she just said to me. I had no one whom I could talk to. I looked around and my mom was just lying on the bed while her friend was sitting next to me. She asked me if I was okay. She said that I should go to my room and get some rest, and hey, I agreed. I got up, she gave me food, and I went off to bed. A few days later, when I went to the pharmacy to buy medicine for my mom, her doctor prescribed her an antidepressant as well because she was, well, psychologically disturbed due to the twisted situations around her. While I was immersed in buying the medicine, I found Rachel in the pharmacy. See, she was with another guy, and they were very intimate with each other and she was holding his hand. It was not something that I was going to buy at all. The first question that popped into my mind was this: what was she doing here in a pharmacy with the man? Second thing, how could she allow someone to hold her hand when she knows that she's my wife? She saw me and retracted her hand instantly, but it was too late. I saw her. When I confronted her and asked her to come with me, she refused it on my face. And I have to do something about it now. For the time being, I became quiet and let her do something for a while. Update number 2. In the evening, Ariel visited us. She brought some soup and flowers, and Ariel was my friend from high school. I knew that she liked me, but hey, I loved Rachel. We had dinner together, and when we went to the terrace, I could not resist anymore, and I just started crying. She hugged me and said that everything would be alright, and she asked me to call Rachel. I didn't know what to tell her, but while we were talking, I received a message from Rachel. As I opened it up, my soul left my body. She sent me a nude message and a video with another man. They were nude together and kissing. My heart was in extreme agony. A person who's connected with you humiliates your reputation and your trust while living in your shoes. People can retaliate like this, and I did not imagine just because I was taking care of my mother, the lady who sacrificed everything for me, and once again, I must face another reality of the world. You see, I remember how I was devastated by the death of my father, and now my mother was going to leave me as well. Before the death of my mother, I had been looking at her, holding her little soft, cold hands, and I remember how she used to take care of me. My mom would go beyond limits to protect me and love her only child. She was a single parent. She used to go to her job, and then in the evening she would cook for me. She talked to me every night, telling me the stories consisting of the moral lessons that invigorated me every single night. She played with me so that I would not feel alone. How could I leave her alone when she needed me now? She didn't need a nurse. She needed her son. I trusted Rachel, and it felt like my emotions were being killed in an ambush. Her pretentious behaviors devastated me, and now it's time that she will pay for the consequences of her actions, damn it. Ariel looked at me and asked if I was alright. I did not know how to explain to her that I was being played by Rachel. My heart and mind were not aligning with me, and my heart was yet in the denial phase. I looked at her and was unable to speak properly, so I just showed her the message. Her spirit was also shattered at that moment, and I did not know what to do. Everything was driving me crazy. I took out the keys and went straight to the home. I told Ariel to leave me and my wife alone, and I was startled. My hands were shaking, and I drove back without saying a word. I did not know what to do. I drank some water, and my mind was boiling, so I went home and knocked on the door, but nobody answered. I remembered that I had keys, and I opened it and went inside, and I went directly into the room, and I sensed something was wrong and saw another man on top of my wife. Their clothes were scattered on the room, and there was this aroma of wild romantic times. I went inside the room, and he was standing there in front of me without clothing, and I started beating him. I started beating him without considering anything. Not even Rachel's screams. I punched him in his face so hard that he fell to the ground, and I grabbed him, made him sit there on the chair naked, and I looked into his eyes, and he wanted to grab his clothing, but I didn't let him do it. I was punching him so hard, but somehow he managed to escape without his clothes on his body. I grabbed her by her arm, put a shawl on her, and looked straight into her eyes. In my mind, I already decided what I had to do with both of them. She tampered with my life, and I told him, just be ready for what's coming next. Update number 3. It's been over a month since the last time I saw Rachel. For the last 3 months, I've been living with my mother, who was suffering from terminal lung cancer, if you've followed me from my previous post. The time had been hard on me. I didn't know what I should call it, a bleak reality or the worst reality of my life, as it unfolded many truths upon me. I received a call from Rachel, who used to be my wife. I just looked at it and clicked the reject button. I used to love her, and I was happy that she also loved me back. After all, she was my wife, my soul partner. But it seemed like I was living in some sort of dark reality. My eyes were surrounded by deceptive lies now that she was afraid of what I was going to do. She was constantly trying to contact me. I used to think that love is sufficient for people to live, as it gives us the strength to survive the bleak realities of this harsh world. Maybe I was wrong, or maybe I was wrong to love Rachel. It was 3 a.m. and I was sitting beside my mother. I'd been looking at her and praying that she would come back to me, open her eyes, call my name, but that dream was not going to come true. The door got knocked at, and Ariel walked in, and I could not control myself as she hugged me and I started crying. I didn't want her to leave. Ariel wiped off my tears, held my hands, and we sat down. We just sat there, staring at my mom till the morning time came and the sun rose. Ariel asked me if Rachel had called me, and I became angry with her, inquiring about it, and asked her why she would call me. After an hour, Ariel brought me a cup of coffee, and I sat there remembering old times. It was as if a TV was switched off and the movie of my life was being played again and again and again and again. Ariel asked me if I wanted to go home or take a nap, and I told her that I was fine, I could stay there for my mother. Ariel told me to take it easy on myself. I should stop manifesting weak emotions on myself and stop being derogatory towards myself. The next morning, I created a family chat group in which I added every member of the family. It took me more than an hour to do all these things, but it was necessary. I added my wife's whole family as well, and after that I made a whole file in which I added nude pictures, nude videos, and screenshots of the messages in which she threatened me, and I did it. I clicked send on those nude pictures and videos to the group without giving it a second thought. The whole drama had been created in the family. Everyone was calling me and inquiring about it. I've done this so that the whole family could see the true face of my wife, and no one asked me why I left Rachel. I started receiving calls from Rachel and her parents, and while I was standing there, I heard the breaking of glass. I went inside the room. My mother was unconscious on the bed with the glass scattered on the floor. I called an ambulance immediately and she was admitted to intensive care. I was sitting outside waiting for a miracle to happen. Rachel's dad, well, he kept on calling, and I finally accepted that call and told him that I would be divorcing his daughter very soon. I did not regret my decision for a while. Many people would be angry with me, but it was the appropriate action according to my own situation, so that my whole in-laws would know why I'm leaving her. I told them about their daughter, and there was drama in the hospital. Her family came into the hospital to confront me and ask their concerns. I was already prepared for this. I showed every single malicious message that she sent me, and she threatened me that she would sleep with anyone just because I was taking care of my sickly mother for a few more months. Her father's respect was jeopardized, and he slapped her in front of the whole family. There was pin-drop silence in the air. I can see the anger in Rachel's eyes, but I focused on the last stage of my mother. The doctor came out of the room and I stood up. "How was my mother?" I asked. He told me to pray to my God so that she'll die with less pain. I fell on the sofa, and I was broken into a million pieces. I could not hold myself up, and the tears came down my cheeks with the pain roaring inside my heart. My mother, she passed, and my friend stood up with me in a crucial state of my life. I returned to my work to ease the grief, and I do receive calls from Rachel, seeking approval of her apology, but it was too late, since she had broken my trust into many more pieces that I won't be able to trust anyone again. At least not for now. So guys, this one was a sad one. I'm gonna be honest with you, the comment section was ripping Rachel to shreds. Everyone in the comment section was saying, normally I would never tell somebody to share nudes, but I'm not blaming OP for this one. I would let anything happen to this Rachel, and I'm telling you guys, they were ripping her apart in the comment section. But let me know your thoughts about this one. Like I said, it was definitely a sad one. So drop your thoughts directly below, and I'll ask you guys this. If you were in OP's position, and you had to choose between your sick mother and your, well, girlfriend/wife who is not really there for you in your time of need, who do you pick? And then the second question, do you think OP went too far? Drop your comments down below. Thank you guys for joining me. My name's Mr. Reddito. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for daily videos. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And just remember, you never know what someone's going through, so it's cool to be kind.